Whether it's noisy people on the train or people walking slowly in front of you, we've all been annoyed by the general public from time to time. But in today's case, one man decided to take matters into his own hands and he murdered a total stranger for slightly inconveniencing him. Today, we're going to be talking about the murder of Jordan Davis. Before we get into the case, I just want to thank our sponsor for making this video possible, NordVPN. NordVPN is a virtual private network service that I have used and loved for years. I always recommend using the internet with a VPN enabled no matter who you are, no matter what you're using the internet for. You need a VPN. It helps to put a barrier between you and all of your precious information and anyone out there that might be trying to access that information or hack you. And it's super quick and easy to do. All you need to do is load up the NordVPN app and with one click, you're connected and protected. They even have an auto connect feature that you can enable, which means you don't even have to click at all. In no clicks, you're connected and protected. I use a VPN all the time to get the most out of my streaming service subscriptions. Streaming services will have different catalogs depending on what country you're in. So I always like to use a VPN to travel around the world and see what everyone else has on Netflix. Some other countries have really good classic movies that we don't have on our Netflix. It's worth having a look around. It also works for YouTube videos that might be blocked in your country. I know I have faced that issue so many times, especially with my research. I'm always finding that things are geographically locked to me, and a VPN is the best way to get around that. But one of the things I love the most about Nord specifically is their threat protection feature. It blocks intrusive ads and web trackers. It checks things that you download for potential malware. It's so important for your safety on the internet. So not only does NordVPN help you access more of the internet, but it's also a super powerful cybersecurity tool. And NordVPN are very kindly offering you guys an exclusive deal when you click the link down below in the description. That's nordvpn.com/Eleanor. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Love you guys. Make sure you're checking out the link down below. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Remember, you can go to nordvpn.com/Eleanor. The link is down below in the description for an exclusive deal, and I recommend you do because NordVPN are so useful. Quickly before we get into the case, I do just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This video is for educational purposes, and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. There's a couple of content warnings for this case, so if any of the following themes are things that you don't want to hear about right now, please click out of the video now. Today we're going to be talking about racism, gun violence, cancer, and domestic violence. So like I said, if you don't want to hear about any of that right now, I totally understand. Click out of the video, look after yourself, and hopefully I'll get to see you again some other time with a different case. But with all that being said, let's get into it. So today's case takes place in Jacksonville, Florida in late 2012. That is where 17-year-old Jordan Davis lived and went to high school. Jordan was originally born in Atlanta, Georgia on February 16th, 1995 to religious parents who saw him as their little miracle baby. His parents had suffered multiple miscarriages in the past, I believe, and they even had a stillborn son before Jordan. So as I'm sure you can imagine, when Jordan came along, they were just elated. However, when Jordan was about 4 years old, his parents' marriage started to crumble. They started falling out and eventually they got a divorce. His father moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and he and his mother stayed there in Atlanta. His dad would try and see him honestly as often as I think he could. He would be flying backwards and forwards all the time. He made sure to see Jordan at least once a month, every few weeks. As Jordan grew up, he became the confident, funny joker one in school. Everyone liked him. He was really popular. He had tons of friends. He did a bunch of different sports, and a lot of his friends said that he wasn't actually that good at the sports that he played. One of them actually said that he was the worst basketball player you'd ever seen. Not my words, his friends. But it's the taking part that counts, He went to church regularly with his family, actually with his grandparents. He would go almost every weekend. And he was just a really good kid. From what we've found in our research, he seemed just a really nice lad. Sadly, when Jordan was 7 years old, his mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and this was the start of a very long battle for her. I believe she did recover, or mostly recover, at one point a few years in, but the cancer sadly came back about 7 years later in 2010, and this time it was even more aggressive, it was even more severe, and his mother was really ill with it, to the point where she was struggling to look after her son, who was now about 14-15 years old. He's at the point where he really needs guidance, he really needs a parent, but she just felt like she couldn't be that for him right now. And so between them, his mother and father made the decision that Jordan would go to live with his father, and he could be raised by his father in Jacksonville, Florida. He could go to school over there, and that way he would get a proper childhood and he wouldn't have to watch his mother get sicker and sicker. Jordan was not a fan of this new change at first. He really tried to fight it in the months leading up to the move, and then when he did move to Florida, he actually kind of fell out with his mother. He wouldn't answer her calls for weeks. He was really heartbroken for quite some time when he first moved, but slowly but surely he started to settle into his new life. He started at his new school and things were going well. He was living by the beach in Jacksonville, and he and his father would go to the beach all the time. He made a new group of friends down there. He even got a girlfriend named Aaliyah. In November of 2012, Jordan Davis was 17 years old. Christmas was coming up in like a month's time, and Jordan planned to go out in the Black Friday sales, probably to get a few Christmas presents. On November 23rd, his friend Tommy came to pick him up in a big red Dodge SUV that he'd borrowed from his auntie. So Tommy pulls up, Jordan goes and jumps in the car, and in the car are two of their other friends as well, Tevin and Leland. So the four of them set off driving. They loved doing this. They would literally just go out together in the car some days. They didn't really have a plan. They had like a loose plan to go shopping, but they would just like go out and listen to music. They would play their favourite songs really loud on the radio and just all sing along. Seemed like a really fun time. So they were out for a little while, and eventually they decided to stop off at a gas station. I think Tommy wanted some cigarettes. I think that was the main reason they were stopping. So they went to the Gate gas station in the south side area of Jacksonville. They parked up the car and Tommy ran inside the shop while the other three stayed back. So they kept the music on. They were still just chilling in the car as they were when they were driving around. Shortly after that, a black car also drives into the gas station and parks like almost next to the boys in their big red Dodge SUV. This black car had a man and a woman in it. The woman got out and went into the shop, and the man stayed in the car. Witnesses at the gas station recall hearing a lot of commotion coming from these two cars. So they all start turning around to look, and they've noticed that an argument has broken out between the car with all the boys in and this black car with this man in. The two cars were just shouting between each other, and witnesses were saying that it was escalating very quickly. As all of this was happening, Tommy had actually finished in the shop and he was walking back towards the car. I don't think he knew what was going on at this point. Tommy walked over and got in the driver's seat of their car, and then all of a sudden witnesses heard 10 gunshots, 10 rapid fire gunshots, and then all of a sudden both of these cars sped out of the gas station. First the red car, followed very quickly by the black car. Once that woman had come back from the shop, they also sped off. Barely any of the witnesses could really tell what had just happened. I mean, it all happened so fast. They didn't know what they were arguing about. All these witnesses heard was just a load of shouting and then 10 gunshots. But less than a minute after both of those cars sped out of the gas station, the red Dodge comes speeding back in with the passengers. They had their windows rolled all the way down and they were screaming out for someone to call 911. As they'd initially sped out of the gas station, they realised that one of their group was injured. 17-year-old Jordan Davis was shot in the gunfire. It was Jordan and his friend Leland that were sat in the back of the car, and Leland says that as the car was like racing out of the gas station, he had pulled Jordan back from the window and Jordan had just like slumped onto him, like collapsed onto him, and that was when Leland realised that there was blood all over him. A wave of panic set over him and he alerted the other two boys that there was blood and that their friend was injured and they needed urgent help. And so Tommy made the snap decision to just turn the hell around and get back to that gas station for help. Someone there could call for 911. And actually, as they did, as they turned round and they were going back into the gas station, they literally saw the black car speeding out. They saw the person that had just shot their friend speeding away from the scene. But they didn't have time to worry about that right now. Jordan was in the back of that car, he was bleeding out, and he was losing consciousness rapidly. The police were called at 7:42 p.m., 3 minutes after the shots were fired. While they waited for emergency services to arrive, people there at the gas station were doing everything they possibly could to try and save Jordan's life. One of them had taken their jumper off and they were using that to like stem the bleeding. A few of them had tried performing CPR on him in different ways. By the way, all of this is taking place just on the ground of some parking lot at a gas station. Paramedics and police arrived within 5 minutes of the 911 call being made. Police immediately taped up the crime scene, knowing that the perpetrator had sped away. They'd spoken to people at the scene and they knew that this could be sealed off. Meanwhile, paramedics rushed straight over to Jordan and they were trying to perform CPR on him, emergency CPR. They loaded him up into a stretcher and put him straight on the ambulance to get him to hospital. So right now, at this point in time, Jordan is being sped off to hospital and all the other boys, all of his friends, are still back at the scene and they're all like calling their parents, saying what's just happened, where they were, that they were gonna need to go talk to police at the police station and everything like that. And it was one of these boys' mothers that actually got in contact with Jordan's father to break the news to him that his son had been shot. Jordan's father was called Ron, and he was actually retired at the time of this case. However, recently, he'd been picking up just random shifts at a hotel in order to earn some money to help Jordan pay for his first ever car. And it was actually while he was on shift at this hotel that he received a call from Leland's mother letting him know pretty much everything that she knew at this point in time, which wasn't actually a lot. Apparently, Leland's mother was already crying, already emotional on the phone, and so immediately Jordan's father knew that something had happened, something bad had happened. She told him that all of their boys had been out in the car that day and their car had been shot at. And currently, Tevin, Leland and Tommy were all at the police station answering questions. Ron then asked where his son was, and Leland's mother said, "All I know is that Jordan is at Shands Hospital. The other boys are okay, but Jordan took a bullet." And Ron's account of the next few hours is absolutely heartbreaking. He called the drive to the hospital excruciating. It was about half an hour away, and he said that he was just hysterically crying the whole way to the hospital, tears just flooding out of his eyes. He could barely even see the road in front of him. He was just so worried sick for his son. Ron arrived at the hospital and he rushed in and he was telling them like who he was and that his son had been shot and transported to this hospital and whatever. But because he hadn't brought a form of ID, the hospital staff actually legally couldn't tell him anything, couldn't let him in there to go and see his son because there was no formal official way of proving that this is his father. It's privacy laws or whatever, and I know that they're essential to have and that they do a lot of good, but in cases like this, it's so frustrating and so heartbreaking that this was a barrier that he just had to deal with. Literally for a whole hour, Ron was just like sat in the waiting area of the hospital, not knowing what the hell was going on with his own son. He knew that his son was in that hospital and that he was injured, but he didn't know how badly. He didn't know what the chances of his son surviving this were. In fact, Jordan could already be dead for all his father knew. No one was communicating with him because he couldn't prove that he was Jordan's father. Finally, 2 police officers, a doctor, and the hospital chaplain all came out to speak to Ron where he'd been waiting, and as soon as he looked up and he saw this team walking towards him, he knew what that meant. He knew that it wasn't going to be good news. The doctor barely even finished his sentence saying that he was unable to revive Jordan, and Ron just collapsed. He just burst into tears. Jordan Davis had been declared dead at 8:15 p.m. in hospital after every effort to save his life had sadly failed. Ron was allowed to go into the room where his son's body was being kept. He was allowed to go in there to say like a final goodbye, you know? But he was only allowed to go and say goodbye under one condition, and that was that he did not, under any circumstances, touch Jordan's body because, of course, this was now an ongoing murder investigation and there was potentially evidence on Jordan's body, and as hard as it would be for his father to go in there and not grab him and cuddle him and kiss him, they said that because of the investigation, he just couldn't do that. But once he was allowed into that room and he saw his son, his baby, laying dead on this hospital bed, he just ran straight over to him. He couldn't fight the urge and he just grabbed him. He was cuddling him, he was sobbing. He said, "I wish no parent had to cry these kinds of tears. I gave him his first kiss as he came into the world. I held my son in my arms in the hospital and kissed him his last goodbye." So now, police are faced with this harrowing murder case. Such a young boy that was taken under such harsh circumstances for no reason. His killer had shot into that car 10 times. And then they just sped away without a single care, without a single thought for the victims. Luckily for the investigation, there had been a few witnesses at the scene that had made sure to note down something about this black car, whether it was like the make and model or the license plate. Police had a lot of information about the perpetrator already, well, about their car. So police ran the license plate on their system and immediately the owner of the black car popped up. It was a 45-year-old man named Michael David Dunn. Michael was a software developer originally from Minnesota, but he'd actually been living in Florida for quite some time at this point. But actually they weren't from the Jacksonville area. They were living in Florida, but not Jacksonville. They were only there for his son's wedding that weekend. Michael had gone to his son's wedding with his fiance or maybe his wife, but actually Michael had been married once before. That was the mother of his now adult children, and the two of them had been divorced for quite some time, and he had this new wife or fiance named Rhonda, and that was actually who he was with at the gas station that day. He and Rhonda had been guests at his son's wedding, and at this point they were driving back to the hotel, I believe, and they'd actually stopped off at this gas station for snacks and some wine to take back to the hotel. They'd pulled into that gas station, Rhonda had run into the shop, she was grabbing the bits they needed, and within those couple of minutes, she had no idea that her husband had committed murder outside, had murdered a minor, a 17-year-old boy that had done nothing more than played music a little bit loud. Just the concept of her walking into that shop and everything is absolutely fine, and within 2 minutes, she walks out of the shop and her partner has killed a kid. You can't imagine. Now, I don't believe Rhonda knew what was going on at any point during this. I actually don't believe she did. She was in the shop and had no way of knowing what was going on outside, and then by the time she got out of the shop, the red car had already sped away, and so she just went back and got into the black car where her husband was, and immediately he stepped on the gas and like sped them out of there, but he didn't say anything to her. So as far as she's aware, she's just gone in a shop, come back out, and now they're leaving the gas station again. But actually, I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because they haven't even questioned Rhonda yet at this point in time. Going back to the timeline, police have only just got Michael Dunn's name. So they sent officers down to his house to arrest him, but of course he wasn't there at his house because he was away in Jacksonville for his son's wedding. So officers got to his house, they knocked, he wasn't there. And actually neighbours started to come out of their houses, noticing police presence in the area. They get talking to these neighbours, and honestly, none of the neighbours seemed surprised to hear that Michael Dunn was being accused of something like this. They said that he was quite an aggressive and violent man, or at least they knew him to be violent and aggressive towards his partners, towards his current partner Rhonda and towards his ex-wife years and years ago. He was always just a very abusive man when it came to his intimate relationships, and so it wasn't completely out of his character for him to have maybe snapped one day and just shot someone. So police got all the information that they could from his neighbours, and before they left, they told all the neighbours to get in contact with police if Michael returned home. The very next morning at 10:30 a.m, Michael and Rhonda arrive back home, and immediately Michael goes round to one of his neighbours' houses, and this was honestly just a confessional. As soon as he got to the neighbour's house, they got talking, and he told the neighbour that he had shot and killed someone in the last couple of days, and he thought that he should probably hand himself over to police. The neighbour agreed with him, and so while Michael was still there in his house, this neighbour picked up the phone and called the police and said that he had Michael at his house and that he was ready to face the consequences of his violence. When police arrived at the property, Michael was ordered to walk outside of the house and go to the bottom of the garden, kneel down and put his hands up so that they could come over and arrest him and take him down to the police station. So the questioning process began, and right away Michael actually declined to get a lawyer, which is very interesting. You don't see that very often, because especially with people that have actually committed a crime, because they know it's too dangerous to talk without a lawyer. But regardless, Michael just starts talking, which was good for police. So what I'm about to tell you is Michael's side of the story. This is the side of the story that he has always maintained, literally till this day. So he said that the two of them had, driven into this gas station that day. They parked up, Rhonda went into the shop, and the lads in this car next to them were playing their music insanely loud. So loud that Michael said he couldn't even hear himself think. And so he, very politely, he said, rolled down his window and asked these lads if they could turn the music down. And Michael said that it was at this point that one of the boys in the back of the car started shouting back at him and threatening him. It was Jordan Davis. Michael said that he was kind of defending himself with these boys when Jordan was supposedly shouting at him and threatening him. He was kind of verbally defending himself. And then all of a sudden he saw Jordan reach down and grab something, and then he pulled a gun into the window. He held up the barrel of a gun to the window as if he was threatening Michael Dunn. Michael even went so far as to tell police that Jordan had said, "I'm gonna kill that bitch." He said that Jordan then swung open his door and started to get out of the car to come over and attack him. And Michael said that that was when his fight or flight kicked in, and he realized that he might need to defend himself here. And that was when he reached for the gun that he kept in his glove box at all times. He swung round and shot at that red Dodge 10 times. Actually, no, Michael didn't say that part in his, as he was recounting the information. We know that he shot the car 10 times because of evidence, obviously. But he didn't want to emphasize that it was 10 times, because obviously 10 shots is excessive for self-defense. And that was really the argument that he was trying to have here, was that Jordan was going to kill him first if he didn't turn around and kill Jordan. Not all of it made sense, there were a couple of little dips in his story. So police started to pick apart Michael Dunn's story, because there was quite a lot of it that just straight up didn't make sense. For example, they hadn't found any guns or any weapons at all, for that matter, in the red SUV. Jordan didn't have a gun on him. None of those boys had any weapons on them whatsoever. So how could Michael have seen Jordan holding a gun up to the window, pressing the barrel against the window, threatening him? None of them had a gun. None of them even had anything that resembled a gun to hold up at the window. Again, none of the witnesses ever saw a gun. The only gun they saw was Michael Dunn's. None of the witnesses ever saw anyone from the red car start to get out. None of them had seen Jordan threatening him and closing in on him. This just hadn't happened. This was not consistent with anyone else's account of what happened. Even so much as the argument, witnesses said they never heard the words, "I'm gonna kill this bitch," at any point in time. They all confirmed that it was literally just an argument about the volume of the music. Those that had heard bits and pieces of this argument confirmed that it was always and only just the music that they were shouting about. So the police kind of bring Michael up on this. They essentially imply that they know he's lying, and at this point he starts to panic. He can clearly see how much his story is unraveling, and he's realizing that he's really putting his foot in it, and so at this point he says that he wants to end the questioning and that he wants a lawyer before they proceed any further. Over the coming days, police interviewed everyone. All the other boys from the car, they interviewed Rhonda, they interviewed all the witnesses from the gas station, and from all of these accounts, they were able to piece together a sequence of events that they believe happened that day. And this is as accurate as they've been able to get. So Rhonda said that the two of them pulled into the gas station, and immediately, as soon as they parked up next to the boys, Michael was already complaining about the music, supposedly saying that he hated thug music, which the use of the word thug is very important in this case, I think, because thug is a very racially charged term. The word thug is more often than not used in a racist context. I was actually reading an article about this whole thing, about the word thug being used in like a racial context, and the author was saying that they see this word just kind of like a modern polite version of calling someone the N-word. It has all that same energy behind it, it's just a different word. But yeah, Rhonda was telling the police that basically Michael already had beef with these kids as they were pulling into the gas station. So then she goes off into the shop to go and buy her things. And this is where we swap to the boys in the red car point of view, because they were, of course, there for this next bit. So Tevin was sat in the front seat and it was Jordan and Leland in the back. And Tevin says that Michael rolled down his window and asked if they could turn the music down. And so Tevin initially did. He went and turned the music down. But the other two in the back were like, no, don't do that. In fact, it was Jordan himself that yelled, fuck that shit, turn it back up. And so Tevin laughed and turned the music back up. Which is a bit cheeky, but also at the same time, it's music. It's music in a public area, and you know you're only going to be parked there for like a minute or two max because your wife has just run in to go get some snacks. But for some reason Michael just couldn't drop this, and Michael was absolutely furious at this. I honestly don't think a lot of people had told this man no in his life. He felt very disrespected by these boys, and so he shouted back at them saying, "You're not going to talk to me like that." And this was when the situation really took a turn. It was mainly Jordan that was arguing back with Michael, and his friends in the car said that he did have an attitude on him, like he was being a little bit rude. But at the end of the day, he was a 17-year-old boy and this is a 45-year-old man that he's arguing with. The maturity levels are very much different. And also, I just want to zoom out from this whole thing. Remember what they're arguing about? Loud music. Loud music that would be over within like 2 minutes when his wife returned, his fiance, it's actually his fiance, when she returned to the car and they drove away. Jordan and the boys' outlook on this situation was that they weren't really doing anything wrong, like they weren't really hurting anyone, no one was suffering at their hands of like because of loud music. Like they knew that they were probably being a bit annoying, but really, is it the end of the world? They just felt that Michael was being a bit of a spoilsport, and so yeah, they were fighting him a bit. They were defending their right to play music as loud as they wanted in their own car, and if he had a problem with it, he should drive away. As all of this was going on, Tommy had walked back over to the car. I don't think he realised what was going on. I don't think he realised that his friends were literally like fighting the guy in the next car. And it was supposedly at this point, according to Michael's version of events, that Jordan lifted the gun and threatened, "I'm gonna kill this bitch." So Michael grabbed the gun, started firing shots into the car. He'd fired 4 shots through the side of the car. And it was at this point that Tommy in the driver's seat realised what was going on, realised they were being shot at, and he just floors it. He speeds them the hell out of that gas station to safety, to protect his friends. And this part, to me, is the most insane part of this case. As the red Dodge starts like speeding out of the gas station, Michael Dunn got out of his car and stood up next to it in full shooting stance to carry on shooting at that car. He fired 4 shots when it was next to him and a further 6 as they were driving out. What kind of self-defense is that when the car is already driving away from you? I can't understand a self-defense claim in this case whatsoever. He was desperately trying to cause some damage. He must have been intentionally trying to hit these young lads in this car. And also, realistically, if you feared for your own life, so say his story is true and that Jordan did have a gun and that Jordan was pointing it at him and maybe Michael did seriously fear for his life, then in what world would you get out of your car and stand up and make yourself a bigger target to someone that you believe is trying to shoot you? Why would you do that? But just a reminder, like we said earlier, the boys didn't have a gun, they weren't threatening him. They never tried to hurt this man. So yeah, after the red Dodge sped away, Rhonda came back out of the shop, jumped in the car with Michael, and they also sped away. They drove straight to the hotel where they were staying that night, and Rhonda said that Michael didn't really say anything to her in the car journey. He didn't mention that he shot anyone. He didn't mention anything about like self-defense and that he was nearly shot himself. He was threatened. Nothing. He just drove them to the hotel as normal. He was acting normal as hell all night. They were just sitting there in the hotel room. He had rum and cokes. They ordered pizza. But Michael, actually, in his version of events with police, he tells this car journey and this hotel stay a lot different. He says that in the whole car journey to the hospital, he was panicking, he was terrified, he was fearing for his life, actually, because he thought that now that he had shot someone and potentially killed someone, he thought that other thugs would be coming after him now, you know, to get revenge or whatever. And Michael insists to police that he wanted to report the shooting from the minute it happened. He didn't want to try and get away with this, but he had a hell of a lot of excuses as to why he didn't actually report it. First of all, he said he didn't want to miss their hotel reservation that night because it was expensive. It was an expensive stay, so like, you know, might as well stay an extra night before you confess to murder. What was he gonna do? Just try and forget that he had just killed a kid and just have a nice sleep in this fancy hotel? How can you do that? So yeah, like I said, they just had a very chill night, ate pizza, drank some alcohol, and at one point, Michael even went to walk their dog, their puppy, and he was completely unarmed for that walk, which, you know, is something I would usually promote, is going unarmed places. But if Michael Dunn truly believed that his life was in danger, I find it very hard to believe that he would be leaving the house to go for a walk alone at night without his gun on him. Especially if he believed that other thugs were going to come back and get revenge on him. If he thought his life was in danger, and we know that he's not afraid to use his gun, why wouldn't he take it with him? You know? Realistically, police knew that this was a very twisted story that they had heard from Michael Dunn. It didn't match anyone else's, and everyone else's version of events was very consistent with each other. His was the only one that was different. So Michael was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, you know, for the other 3 boys in the car, and 1 count of firing into an occupied vehicle. But despite these charges, and despite piles of evidence against him, Michael still insisted that he was the victim in this case. I actually have a quote from him that says that he was the victor, but also the victim. Which, first of all, victor? What? That implies that he has won something here. What is there to win? You murdered a kid. The wording of that alone just shows how he views what he did to Jordan, like it was a battle, when it wasn't. He was a kid playing music in his car and you shot him because you didn't like that. And on top of that, let's focus on the other side of this quote. That quote is so loaded. He is the victor and the victim. How are you a victim either? What, because you were subjected to loud music for 2 minutes and you can't handle your emotions and your feelings and communicate like an adult, so you have to resort to murder when you don't get your way, when you feel disrespected? You can't do that. I think that just shows how fragile this man was, that this very minor conflict in his day had to result in him killing someone to feel like he won, like he was the victor. I also think that the way that Michael Dunn acted here just kind of shows that he was just a murderer waiting to happen. If you can snap so quickly and easily over someone in a different car playing loud music when you have the opportunity to just drive away, like, if you're gonna kill someone over that, then you were probably gonna kill someone for anything at some point. If you get into a slight argument with strangers and then your brain tells you to grab the gun from your glove box, it's insane to me. It is so insane to me. So Michael was denied bail, and so he was kept in like police custody until his trial, and his team tried a hell of a lot of, like, I don't want to say dirty tactics to make his trial easier, but okay, well, let me just tell you, and you can decide if they're dirty tactics or not. Michael himself was writing letters to his, like, friends and family on the outside, trying to give them little bits to add into his statement, which, is that even allowed, first of all? But anyway, he was giving them, like, little bits and pieces to add into his statement. And one of these letters, he claims that Jordan shouted, "This shit is going down now." That's the first time he's ever mentioned that. That's literally the first time that has ever come up. He never mentioned that in any police questionings or interviews or anything. Where's that come from? Where has that just come from? He would also write to Rhonda from prison, very obviously trying to gaslight her and manipulate her memory of that day. He was mainly trying to, like, confirm to her that he was panicking for the whole car journey to the hotel and he was fearing for his life. Just because she might not have noticed it doesn't mean that he wasn't. Rhonda still maintains that he was calm and collected on the drive home, but he insists that he wasn't, and he insists to her that he wasn't too. Michael Dunn's legal team also actually tried to get the trial moved to a different county. Now, the reason they gave for this was that the case had had a lot of media coverage, and they feared that anyone in that area that was picked to be on the jury, he feared that they wouldn't be very objective. They would be quite biased because of the media coverage. So they wanted to move it elsewhere. But it seems there could actually be another reason for them wanting to move the trial. In Michael Dunn's written letters home, particularly to his grandmother, he is rather openly racist, using terms like thugs and the blacks. He mentioned to his grandma that he hopes his trial gets moved to a different area, a whiter area, where he has a better chance of having a predominantly white jury. With everything that Michael Dunn has said and written, it is very clear that this is just a very racist, aggressive, and privileged man that has never been told no. He thinks the world revolves around him and his own vile views and opinions. And as soon as anyone gets in the way of that, it seriously upsets this man-child. How dangerous for someone so easily triggered to be able to have a gun just in their glove box at all times. Someone that is known for being violent in the past. And he was just allowed to have that on him. And it's just so heartbreaking that he then used that gun to kill a child. He was 17, he was still a child. He hadn't even graduated from high school yet. Anyway, the trial ended up staying exactly where it was planned to be, and it began in February of 2014. Allegedly, his legal team even tried to dismiss a lot of the non-white members of the jury for different, seemingly like made up reasons. There were no valid reasons for them to have been dismissed, and it's kind of clear that they just didn't want them there because they weren't white. The team were unsuccessful for the most part of getting these people removed. A lot of them did stay. And anyway, the trial went ahead as expected. So Michael's defense team are trying to say that he had the right to shoot and kill Jordan Davis in self-defense because he says that Jordan was holding the gun up to the window, threatening to shoot him, saying, "I'm going to kill this bitch." He even got out of the car and started walking towards him. Michael says, anyway. But actually, the ballistic tests even prove that story wrong. Like, we have physical evidence against Michael's story because, like I said, he shot those first 4 shots into the car. So Jordan was inside the car when he was shot at. So he wasn't getting out and threatening him and coming towards him. Instead, this 45-year-old man had specifically aimed inside this car at Jordan Davis. At the end of this trial, Michael Dunn was found guilty of the 3 attempted murders and 4 firing into an occupied vehicle, but that last charge of Jordan's actual murder proved to be a tricky one for this jury. They couldn't come to a unanimous decision. A couple of them did frustratingly believe Michael Dunn's self-defense story. So they couldn't come to a unanimous verdict, and so a mistrial was declared and a new one was set up. Finally, in this second trial, they did come to a unanimous decision that Michael Dunn was guilty of Jordan Davis's murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 90 years. So that man ain't never getting out there. He is dying behind bars. After Jordan's death, his family became his voice, speaking out for tighter gun control laws and advocating for victims of gun violence. I'm gonna leave some links down below in the description of this video if there's any petitions I can find, donation links, anything. I don't really know what's gonna be there yet. I will find them later. But yeah, please go down and have a look in the description of this video. And please do consider donating to any of these causes. This kind of stuff is so heartbreaking. This boy was 17 years old. No one should have the right to be able to take his life in a split second because he was listening to music with his friends. That just breaks my heart into a million pieces. We've all been Jordan before. We've all been out in public, probably being a little bit of a nuisance because we were just having such a great time with our friends. And the fact that someone can just grab a gun from their glove box and end someone's life in an instant like that, it just shouldn't, in my opinion, it should not be able to happen. So, but yeah, please do have a look through those links. It would mean the world, not only to me, but I'm sure it would mean the world to Jordan Davis's family. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for taking the time to check out those links. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Remember, you can go to nordvpn.com/Eleanor. The link is down below in the description for an exclusive deal, and I recommend you do because NordVPN are so useful. Huge thank you to all of my channel members for supporting the channel and helping me decide the cases that I cover. All of my tier 2 members are on screen right now, so thank you so much. If you want to become a channel member, you can click the join button down below. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up down below. That would really help me out. If you want to watch another one of my videos, I'll leave you one here on screen right now. I'll pick you one specially. And also, if you want to subscribe to my channel, you can click this little circle with my face in because I post true crime content every single week. So with that being said, I'll see you next week. Bye.